Back on the original PlayStation in 1999, Resident Evil 3 was a decent follow-up to the greatness that was Resident Evil 2. While it was a more action-focused entry into the series, it introduced us to Nemesis, a bioorganic weapon with a relentless mean streak and the ability to wield weapons. Fast forward to 2020 and we have a remake of Resident Evil 3 that features the mechanics of last year's remake with all the action of the original game. Is it just as good as its predecessor though? Let's dive in and find out. The story sees you taking control of Jill Valentine, one of the survivors of the events of the first Resident Evil. As she sets out to expose the Umbrella Corporation and also make an exit from Raccoon City, she is attacked and relentlessly pursued by a hulking monster. After an incredibly narrow escape, she meets up with Carlos Oliveira, a member of the Special Ops unit focusing on rescuing civilians from the outbreak that has occurred in the city. It isn't long before she gets caught up in a whirlwind of events that will take her to different locations around Raccoon City. The story is pretty entertaining and for the most part plays out very similarly to the events of the original game. I loved how well the story was told and just how cinematic it is, not to mention how the characters were portrayed. However, it's not a perfect reimagining though. The game is incredibly short and significantly more linear this time around. It's possible to complete the game in about 4 or 5 hours, plus you aren't faced with any choices during the story that would impact how certain aspects of the game played out. Not only that, but there are certain enemies and areas that don't even make an appearance. It's a bit disappointing, but despite this, the story that's told is quite enjoyable right up until the very end, and it also didn't stop me from starting up another playthrough right after my first completion. In terms of gameplay, Resident Evil 3 plays similarly to last year's Resident Evil 2 with some minor changes. It still takes place from an over-the-shoulder perspective, but Jill's movement feels much more fluid, which is most likely due to the fact that the game is more about the action than the atmosphere. Additionally, Jill's quick dodge maneuver makes a return, which when pulled off perfectly allows you to enter slow-mo to get in a few good shots. Knives also function a little differently in that they are indestructible this time around but ultimately feel weaker. This also means that you aren't able to stab an enemy when they grab you, which would allow you to catch your breath and also possibly survive the encounter. Instead, you'll need to spam a button to fill up a meter so that you can muster up the strength to force the enemy off of you. I can somewhat understand why they did this, but it still feels like a bit of an odd design choice to remove the feature. The zombies in Resident Evil 3 are a little more resilient and take more shots before they stay down for good. This might be why the knife has been made indestructible as a means for the player to conserve ammo. Other enemies are rather fantastic though, with each one posing a new threat when they are first encountered. It's actually a nice touch since it keeps you changing up your weapons and your strategies based on the kind of challenge that's presented. Nemesis himself, while recreated to be pretty terrifying, feels a tad squandered. Unlike Mr. X from Resident Evil 2, Nemesis only ever shows up at scripted moments during the story. Unlike the former, who was a constant anxiety-inducing threat even when he wasn't in the room. Just hearing his footsteps meant that he was close by and was enough to send me into a panic. Look, don't get me wrong though, when Nemesis first shows up a little bit into the game, it immediately got my heart racing, but it wasn't long before I discovered that he can actually easily be dealt with. The one-on-one fights with him and cutscenes are great though and have been crafted well, delivering an awesome cinematic experience. As mentioned before, Resident Evil 3 has a fairly linear structure. Exploration can be quite rewarding when it comes to finding items, but that's pretty much it. In addition to this, there are far fewer puzzles to be solved, which surprised me a little bit since the puzzle solving has always been a staple for the series. After completing the game for the first time, you'll unlock the shop, which features a manner of different items that can make future playthroughs much easier or just simply more enjoyable. From coins that enable regenerating health to weapons with infinite ammo, you're bound to find something here that might appeal to you. Items can be purchased using points, which can be earned by completing various challenges in-game. These range from straightforward tasks such as killing a certain amount of enemies with a particular weapon to shooting the hats off zombies. It's actually very likely that you'll complete tasks without even really trying though. I quite like the shop as it's a great incentive to replay the story and possibly unlock something that could aid you in harder modes or just to mess around without having to worry about ammo. Resident Evil 3 is a gorgeous game. It runs smoothly without any slowing down at any point right up until the credits roll. The character models look fantastic and it was so amazing to see how everything was reimagined for this remake. I also love the little details, such as our protagonist being covered in more and more dirt as you progress through the story. There's even a point later in the game where Jill walks through a sanitizing tunnel, and the way the liquid glistens on her skin is incredible. The audio is pretty much on par with the game's visuals, featuring a tense soundtrack, great voice acting, and weapons that sound authentic. Resident Evil 3 is a great game. The story is enjoyable to play through, but at the same time it's lacking a fair amount of content from the original game, not to mention the fact that it's incredibly short. Nemesis also wasn't as intimidating as I thought he would be, but the boss fights with him are fun to play and are incredibly cinematic. The gameplay, while lacking certain aspects from Resident Evil 2, is quite fluid and has been altered to fit the more action-oriented theme of the game. It also doesn't hurt that it is incredibly pretty to look at and sounds amazing. While Resident Evil 3 feels like it's missed a few notes in certain places, it also hits a bunch of good ones and is a thoroughly enjoyable romp through Raccoon City. If you enjoyed this review, please hit that like button, and if you are new to the channel, hit that subscribe button. And if you got your hands on the Resident Evil 3, let me know what you thought of the game in the comment section down below. I'd love to know your thoughts and opinions. Thanks so much for watching. I'll see you next time.